What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm gonna head back to my channel here, see if I can find, excuse me, see if I can find the chat. Oh, good, it showed up quickly this time. So I can see all the meaningful and important things you had to say. Now, I don't have a huge list of topics. I have one specific one that I want to go over, but I realized I've been slacking off, hadn't made any videos or anything lately, so I just want to let you guys know that I am alive and well. Hair's still on point. Gator's still sucking. Bad news. Howdy. Thanks for showing up. So I just wanted to, it'll just be me. I didn't realize I was going to be able to do this until like 5 minutes ago. So I didn't talk to Che or Dan. So it's just going to be me because I don't know if I'm going to go longer than 15, 30 minutes on this video. But I just wanted to go over whatever, say hi to you guys, go over whatever topics you guys want because there's still a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world. And there's one specific topic, which is a video that I was thinking about based on a few tweets that we can cover when a few more people get in here. George's hair is looking good. Thank you. Just got it cut like 2 days ago. Keeping me pretty. I can't sing and I can't dance, so I gotta stay looking pretty, right? So I'm like I said, I only got like maybe 10 or 15 minutes of stuff that I'm gonna cover. So if you guys have questions, write them down and we'll go over it. I'm gonna drink my fake soda. So one of the main topic that I want to talk about was basically a concept, more of like a way of thinking. I'm sure you guys have come across this before. Anyone who's talked about it at any sort of like preparedness, extreme preparedness, not just like a 72-hour bag or a flashlight in your car, or whatever, but actual what we would consider prepping or survivalism has probably got this argument. And it really doesn't make sense, but I wanted to go over it. And that's some version of someone's just going to take your stuff. Some version of that. Someone's just going to kill you and take your stuff. If it gets that bad, someone's just going to kill you and take your stuff. The latest, more specific comment, and I won't, it has nothing to do with, because it was like a fitness account that I follow, but it doesn't really matter. I'm not trying to drag anyone, but specifically the wording of the latest time I saw it was, preppers who buy farms and plan for societal collapse don't have much of a plan when the cartels decide they want the farm. So there's a few things that I wanted to go over in this. First of all, is the idea that most or even many preppers are actually expecting or planning or trying to prepare for complete societal collapse. Most of us, at least I'm not, and I don't think most of us are, all the other YouTube preppers and everything, most of us are not actually expecting a full-on societal collapse, because if we were, we would be doing things slightly differently, move to another country, full-on homestead, farm, self-sufficient, compound, whatever. Some people are expecting that, or at least it's difference between thinking it's a possibility and actually this is what I'm planning for. Most of us think that that's a possibility if certain things were to happen. Most of us are not actively planning or expecting a complete Mad Max. So that's the first part of this argument that people always bring up about, like, oh, the gangs and the cartels are just going to destroy you, is that we're not really expecting or planning for that scenario anyway. So when you have a hobby level farm / homestead or a year's worth of food and solar panels in just a normal house, you're not expecting it to get complete disaster to where you're going to have like cannibal hordes, so we're not planning for that. So the premise is false. We're not planning for societal collapse. So that's the first part of the premise that is false, is that preppers are not planning for societal collapse. The second one is that you're saying something that's technically true, but like meaningless and without any alternative. It's just, I think a lot of times, and this is the most dangerous part about it, I think a lot of times it's used as a cop-out mentally for these people, because they see it's by people who see the need. They're not arguing that you don't need this stuff. So they think like, why is this not something that I should be doing? And their mind settles on, it's not going to matter anyway, because the cartels are just going to get together and kill you and take all your stuff. So I think that's what it is a mental cop-out, an excuse mentally that you can say, I don't need to do this because it doesn't matter. It's like trying to prepare for a huge meteor that's just going to destroy the whole planet. We're all going to die anyway, and there's no point in surviving. So that's a bad way of thinking about it, first of all. But also, it's technically true without being meaningful. You can say a lot of things that are true, but they're so obtuse that it's just not actionable. So most of the time, when this idea enters into the prepping conversation, it's similar to walking up to someone who's like showing somebody how to dodge an overhand right and then throw a crisp 1-2 as a counter, and then being like, what if you get attacked by 20 gang members with machetes? You're just going to die, and that's not going to work. And it's true. You're like, yeah, that's not, you're right. If 20 armed people come at me unarmed, this specific thing that I'm talking about for specific scenarios isn't going to work. What's your point? Because they never even bring up an alternative. Like, you can't do this. You need to do this. It's someone who's like living in an apartment in a major city being like, well, if the end of the world happens, a prepper farm, they're just going to take all your stuff. And like another comment on this thread said, the rural advantage is overstated. They're so isolated and spread out from one another that makes defense incredibly difficult. Be like, my comment was simply compared to what? Rural advantage is overstated compared to what? Like, are you comparing it to someone in the suburbs? Then I don't think the defensive advantages of being rural are overstated. They're marginal, obviously. You're not like invincible out there compared to the suburbs, but you're not. They're not even talking about alternatives. They're just talking about the weaknesses in a plan, which is, like I said, it's obtuse because every plan has weaknesses. You can defeat any plans with what ifs, with different scenarios you come up with, and they always go to the what if that is going to obviously defeat most plans. And that's what I come back on is if you are going to think you're going to have to face well armed, maybe even a military level, like the cartel level armed groups of dozens or hundreds of people, there are very, very few things you could do about that without having a similarly sized and similarly well armed group. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything. I think it was Magic Prepper had a video recently about how better than nothing is a poor standard for preparedness, and I completely agree. But it is actually true that any level of preparedness puts you farther along the continuum and makes you more likely to survive. People always talk about, like going back to the self-defense example, about which martial art is better. For, like, you can't take someone down or you can't use your jiu-jitsu because their buddy's just going to kick you in the head. It's like, yeah, I mean, that can happen, but it also, a jiu-jitsu black belt is going to fare way better in any self-defense scenario than someone who has done no martial arts training. Whether that's one guy, whether that's 20 guys, they're still probably going to lose to the 20 guys, but they have a much better chance in any scenario than the person who isn't doing anything about this. And that's where like the better than nothing thought works. What you don't want to do is, like he was pointing out, is that you don't want to just say, I can't get to perfect level preparedness, so any preparedness is okay. You do want to find out what's realistic, what you think you're going to have to face, and get to a level of preparedness that is going to hit a lot of these scenarios. And that's what the point is if you have a prepper homestead farm that's rural, you can absorb a hell of a lot more scenarios without danger, without inconvenience, without major lifestyle change, without risk, or with less risk than someone who is just living a normal American lifestyle. Certainly ones in big cities and things like that. We can look at all the stuff that's happened through COVID, all the different stuff like, that's happening in other countries, certain natural disasters, going without power. All that stuff is easier to absorb if you're in a, like, what would be considered a typical prepper setup, whether that's in the suburbs, whether that's in the rural, whatever. And the fact that those plans would get defeated by if the cartels come for you, it's like, yeah, what's your point? I still don't know what their point is. And I really do think that their point is that they see the need and they're making the excuses for, why don't I need to be doing this? So like, holy shit, this would be bad scenario. I'm not doing anything about it. Why not? And then they settle on, it doesn't matter because of these X reasons. So that's what I think. Let me read a few of your guys' comments. How safe is money in the banks? I've heard the FDIC does not have enough money to cover losses in a banking crisis. I mean, the not enough money is a fake limitation, not fake limitation. It's not a real limitation because they can continue to make money. They covered more than the FDIC limits in the Silicon Valley bank failures. Liquidity is obviously going to be an issue at some point. So I don't think money is, I'm not a financial advisor, but I don't think money is safe in a bank, especially if you need actual liquidity. I don't think most people would actually end up losing anything below the FDIC limit, because I've always thought that the government's just going to end up creating the money because of things like this. Because if they don't end up just hyperinflating by printing, they would have to not cover FDIC losses, not cover Social Security and Medicare, not cover military spending, not cover other government spending, not cover the national debt. So it's much more simple and lets them pretend to maintain power for at least a little while longer, a lot more easily if they just make the money. So I always think you would eventually get at least the 250K FDIC or whatever they raised it to, if they raised it. But the point is, can you access it? And throughout this problem, and process, will you just lose all your purchasing power while you can't do anything? So I think that's the risk. It's not necessarily that you will never get that money back, those dollars back, but that you won't have access to it for potentially long periods of time, and the worst time to not get it. You probably won't be able to actually get it in cash. That's certainly a limitation. That's a limitation now. And that when you do eventually get it back, you'll have lost a lot of purchasing power. So, and that's what I think is unsafe about the banks. Not that you're not likely to ever, that you're likely to completely lose the money. I think that's a relatively low risk, but it is a risk. Oh, what's up, Lucius Cincinnatus? We can get started now. So then, Cold War purposes, howdy for Central Texas. Howdy as well. Good to see you too, Dr. Prepper. If you happen to be in a Bamson Moist says, if you happen to be in a remote place, a lot less human problems. Right. And that's the point, is that I always ask these people, what's your point? Are you saying that we should have a plan that doesn't have any flaws, that if you get attacked by the cartels that you have to be able to survive, or you shouldn't do anything? That's a ridiculous standard. It doesn't even make sense, because all these other people that are saying that, they would fall to a cartel attack too, and they would fall to a hell of a lot less than that, because they don't even have a gallon of water in their apartment. So that makes no sense. And like, people may think that the rural advantage of security is overstated, but only if you think that you can like easily fend off a big, invading force with only 1 to 4 or 5 people in your homestead. That's unrealistic. That's an overstated advantage, but it's certainly a lot easier to hole up in a farm of some kind than in an apartment or even a heavily dense suburbs or something like that. So they're really, like I said, all the people who say this, they're saying something that may be technically true depending on how they word it, but it's just so obtuse to the point of being meaningless. Like I said, it's exactly like going up to someone who is training a martial art and saying like, well, what if you have to fight 7 guys at once? Like, well, I'm going to get my ass kicked just like you, so get the fuck out of here. But you're not necessarily training to, you're going to do other things that you can to hopefully avoid that scenario. But if these crazy scenarios happen, then yeah, you're probably fucked. If they decide to launch all 8,000 nukes or whatever at once, we're probably fucked. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't have some potassium iodide on hand, or shouldn't have your gas mask or all that other stuff for different types of nuclear events. And I think people way too often use that as a way to be like, I don't have to do anything because it just is pointless, doesn't matter. It's kind of a cucked way of thinking, if you ask me. And it's similar to the people who say you shouldn't have a gun because, someone will just take it away from you, or you're more likely to hurt yourself in an accident. It's like, man, quit being a bitch. If you want to be a bitch, that's on you. Leave me alone. My place, talk about the bunker being built in Hawaii by Zuckerberg. Okay, I will in a minute. I don't know a lot about it, but I will mention that. Lady T says, my place is on a dead-end road, and a dead-end road way in the sticks backs up to fairly deep gorge for an escape route. Yeah, like you're telling me that that's not a much easier place to be safe and defend if necessary than a random house in a big city or in the suburbs, or certainly in an apartment. Yeah, are you going to be in a really bad way if a couple dozen cartel people with rocket launchers? Yeah, but like, what is the point of even saying that? I'd like to know what these people think is going to happen to them in such a scenario. If the farms are even all taken over, they're just going to join the cartel instead, I guess. I mean, I guess that could be a plan. Printed currency is less than 15% of total M2. Remember, we have freedom of the press, so the treasury just prints more. Yeah, that's one of the things that people don't realize, is like, this is no longer like this isn't like a what's that Christmas movie about the bank run? Where you're talking about literal cash, because there can be cash bank runs very easily. You go to a bank right now, if you have $100,000 in there, there's zero chance you could get that all taken out of cash. A lot of people are talking about having trouble getting like $2,000 to $5,000. Certainly anything 10 grand or more, the banks are going to balk at that. And that's not because they don't have the money. It's the fact that the money's all digital and only a tiny percentage of it is represented in cash. And they decide how much based on seasonal fluctuations and all sorts of other things. But they don't, when we're talking about printing money, or there being like a shortage of money, or the banks not having enough, that's not really cash. That's why you should have cash, because there isn't very much of it, and a huge percentage of it, especially the larger bills, is like overseas, because of all these other countries that prefer to use the dollars, because of all the national, the cartels and the drug trades all use American money for the most part, or use a lot of it, and especially the hundreds. So a lot of that cash isn't even in the US. So there is a shortage of cash in any situation where you need cash. but that doesn't really have that much to do with the actual amount of money. There's all sorts of liquidity issues that can come up just because of the shortage of actual money, or more importantly, the ability to access it and use it. Like all these assets, if they can't be sold off or transferred or whatever, then you have a liquidity problem, even if you technically have a bunch of money. Or if like the bank sees up and, that sort of stuff. Deceptive title. It's in quotes. Check out the title. It's in quotes because that's what these people are saying. And that's what I'm rebutting. Minorly clickbaity, but I did put in quotation marks because it is what they say. And they only give you so much space in there to write something down. So I can't say, some people say this, but I think that's why I have to do the 30-minute to an hour live stream, so I can explain what's in my clickbaity titles. Lady T says, hit the thumbs up, guys. I do appreciate that. We got 40 watching and 0 thumbs up right now. I think we get that at least 20, right? It's got to help for something. That's what the people say. Another one about the Zuckerberg building bunker and billionaires building them. I think that obviously right now, most people feel an increased level of, certainly us preppers, but even normies see that stuff is going wrong in the world, stuff all over the world, that the ability to count on infrastructure and security from the government, that confidence has wavered. So I think most people understand the ability or the intelligence or necessity of doing some kind of preparedness. They're just limited. So I think the fact that billionaires are doing that always has never surprised me, because most people at some level think it's good to have backup plans for certain things. It's just the amount of money and effort that it takes to effectively do it is outside the scope of what a lot of normies and normal people are willing to do. But when you're a billionaire, you're like, what's an extra 50 million to take care of this thing that's nagging at me? Which I think most people would do. I think most people would do some level of preparedness type stuff, backup plan, security backup plan, if they were billionaires. So it's not surprising to me. It doesn't really necessarily, to me, mean that they know something we don't. Or I think being a billionaire is not always going to mean that they're super geniuses, but they're probably going to be smarter than average. They certainly have more resources than average. And I think just as a group, that type of person is always going to, forward-looking planners. They're going to be more likely to do some level of preparedness type stuff. So they obviously have the resources. Now, someone like Zuckerberg, who's plugged into obviously massive social media, we know that the Facebook has worked directly with FBI and these other intelligence agencies about controlling the flow of information. So like he as an individual may know something we don't, probably knows a lot of some things I don't, but I don't have any particular reason to think that him building a bunker is pointing at anything. I think we're in perilous times, and I think a lot of people, including Zuckerberg, realize that the chances of nukes going off somewhere in the world are higher than they've ever been in our lifetime. And like I said, so if you are a billionaire, what's an extra 10 to 50 million or whatever spent to make sure you can check off that block in the event of some craziness? It's a Wonderful Life. Yes, that was a movie. Sorry. About the bank runs. These aren't the prepper droids you're looking for. When I need to cash a big check, I call bank to confirm they got the cash. No problems. Right. Yeah, I mean, you should usually do that, but it's kind of stupid that that's literally what a bank is supposed to be doing, right? Is holding your money. So nowadays, 10 grand or certainly even 5 grand is a very modest amount of money. Like I just had to pay a couple $1,000 just to fix a water heater or pool pump. If you go buy a used car, I just on Facebook today, I saw a 1999 Chevy truck 4x4 with 250,000 miles on it. They wanted $7,500, and they'll probably get it or close to it around here. These prices are insane for that. So 10 grand is like nothing anymore. And certainly out here in Vegas, people use cash for a lot of stuff. So the banks here are probably more used to it. They probably have a little bit better reserves. They're not going to bat an eye quite as much to seeing 10 grand in cash. But a lot of other places, they don't want to deal with it. Cool. The test thumbs. But yeah, so that was the main thing I wanted to talk about. It's only really gone 15 minutes, was this idea of don't fall into that mindset of if the worst case scenario would defeat me, then there's just no point. Because of course there's scenarios that could defeat your plans, but being better prepared at any level is going to make you much better set to survive a whole host of scenarios. Like just like I used the self-defense example, if you take somebody like John Jones, who is like 6'4", UFC heavyweight champion, undefeated for like 15 years or whatever, and jiu-jitsu, black belt level jiu-jitsu, good wrestling, super good striking. Is he going to be able to fight 20 people unarmed? Probably not. Is he going to be able to fight 4 or 5 normal people unarmed? Probably. Certainly going to obliterate any other one or two other normal people. So, like, why wouldn't you want to try to get to these levels? So it's the idea of some fat couch potato who can't even defeat a flight of steps, telling him like, why are you training? If 30 people attack you, you're going to get your ass kicked. Like, there's just, it doesn't, it's so obtuse as to be completely meaningless, and it's just being used as an excuse as to why you're not doing anything to prepare most of the time. What's up, Brian? I appreciate that. Season's greetings to you as well. Glad to see you're doing well, or I hope you're doing well at least. Good to see you here. It is getting it's so crazy that it's already the end of the year, right? We're only 10 days from less than 8 a week basically from Christmas. Holy shit. 17th already. Wild times. It's actually not too cold here. It's definitely cold by my standards. I got thin blood now, but depending on where you guys are at, it's probably much colder. But I definitely think, let me know what you guys think we're going to see some weirdness. I didn't really expect, if you'd asked me like a year ago, that the Fed would be potentially about to pivot on rates this soon without something major happening, but that's what the talk is. But this certainly could be an example of jawboning, where they're trying to get the benefits of doing a slight rate cut just by talking about it without actually having to do it. Because we all know that there's a chance that, despite the fact that the Fed's supposed to be independent, that they always seem to do the necessary things to juice the markets before an election cycle, and that's certainly coming up. But I think this could be a really ugly election cycle, as most people think, and it could get really weird. SBQR Cincinnati says, train to your maximum capability. Amen. Train first for the most realistic scenarios. It's largely a matter of tipping the odds in your favor. Yeah, fortune favors the bold, as they say, or as Bullseye says in 13th Warrior, luck often enough will favor or save a man if his courage holds. And you give the universe the best chance to save your ass. Yeah, it's about tipping the odds in your favor. Remember, all these casinos out here in Vegas were built on the fact that playing blackjack, they have like a 1.5 or 2% edge if you're playing basic strategy. So a lot can be done if you just give yourself a little bit of an edge. And like I said, there's so many scenarios out there that making yourself prepared and skilled and all this stuff is going to serve you in most of them. Certainly serve you well in most of them. Even in the ones that you might eventually lose, you still have a better shot. I think we will see some crazy stuff during the election campaign, says Brian Hill. Yep, I agree. Definitely. I'm not sure exactly. And the test says 2024 is going to be the crazy Wild West. Yeah, it's so crazy that it's hard to predict like what type of stuff we're going to see. I have scenarios in my head that could see dollars strengthening depending on what's going on and all over the place. Oh, it says Civil War movie A24. Just a second. I had to go. We were all joking about on Twitter. I had to go on Amazon and get the glasses, the Riz shades, where he's like, "What kind of American are you?" We're all making fun of it. So I'll be making some videos. Go do some range day videos with my Riz shades now. These are such poor quality that the glass is or the plastic is like Ripley, so you don't even get like a clear image. It appears that they're kind of smudged, but you can see it's just like Ripley plastic. But I will put a link in the description after I make this. After I go get off live to where you can get the Riz shades. Yeah, what kind of American? The kind with fantastic fucking hair and a rifle, a shotgun, and a 4-wheel drive, as the song says. Shotgun, a rifle, and a 4-wheel drive. What kind of American? But yeah, so for $14, which is wildly overpriced for this Ripley piece of plastic, you too can have ultimate Riz for the coming Civil War. Oh, it's a wild world we live in, isn't it? These are the things we have to do to entertain ourselves as Western civilization collapses around us in complete immolation. But in my mind, there's only 2 kinds of Americans. The kinds, what kind are you? The kind that has the Rule the Wasteland survival fishing kit, or the kind that doesn't? And remember, this is guaranteed to save your life in the coming Civil War or your money back. And I'm sure that movie is going to be absolute garbage. or just weirdness. Speaking of absolute garbage movies, I did just last night. These are my notes. Watch Leave the World Behind. It was really weird and crappy, but not in the ways that people might think. My biggest beef with the movie, it was kind of slow and didn't have a whole lot for me to talk about in terms of the prepping and preparedness, which I will go over in the review video, which I'll hopefully do tomorrow. But the actual like movie making elements of it, which is really annoying me. They were being super extra, as the kids say, with like the cinematography. The music was like incredibly overbearing and annoying. Just weird stuff like that, like weird shot choices and the way that they would just. It's like this guy has to have just been making music videos or something before. It really, to me, was like one of those movies where they're just the entire movie is based thinking about how it's going to go over playing it at Sundance to a bunch of other movie directors and actors, and no thought to how to make an actual good movie that is going to be enjoyed and rewatched and understood by normal people. And I wouldn't be surprised. This movie had, like, if you just watch this movie, most elements of the movie, it should have been like an $8 or $10 million movie, probably, not counting paying the actors, because they had, A-listers in it, people like Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke and stuff like that. But so barring whatever they paid them, this movie should not have been any expensive at all. There's not very many people in it, not very many locations. But because of all these, I wouldn't be surprised if this movie cost like $100 million or something, just because of all the extra stuff they were doing that they really, really had no reason to do and was like distracting. Lady T is a jacked up 4x4. All right, that's what you need. Tess says, you a Blade Runner fan? I appreciate it. I'm not really a huge fan of it. Especially the new one. I'm not the Villeneuve, is that the director, fan. His visual style of like all these huge gray open rooms and everything. It's really just like dreary and this kind of weird. I'm not a huge fan of his stuff. Like he did the new Dune as well, but I'm not a big fan of that. But the first one's cool. I like some, like the Tears in the Rain speech and stuff like that. But I never was a huge fan of Blade Runner. But I like those older movies a lot better than the modern ones, that's for sure. So you guys should think of a drill. We'll come up. That's what you guys should comment. Think on this and either email or comment later about what kind of Civil War drill. Let's call it a Civil War drill, like a shooting drill, like what the distance is, the targets, and everything. Well, I can do while wearing these and try not to have some kind of epileptic seizure. Everything turns like kind of like rosy orange. And then I'll make a video, Civil War drill. Because I got one of the ones, speaking of movie drills, and then I can make a compilation video of all the shooting drills based on movies. Because one of the ones I still haven't done because I don't have enough stands yet is the Bangkok Rules drill from Escape from LA, where he has 4 guys standing there and he says, nobody draws till this hits the ground, and he throws the can up, and then when they all look at it, he blasts them all before they start looking. So you have to throw the can up and shoot 4 targets before the can hits the ground. That's the Bangkok Rules, and it's like at probably like 7 yards, maybe 5. They're kind of like just paced out, not too far. So that's one to get the Bangkok. Then we need to come up with one for the Civil War. Talking about World Left Behind with that part. Oh, yeah, I thought you were just actually asking me. It's are you transitioning? I'm transitioning into a post-apocalyptic warlord. Never had any gender identity issues. But yeah, it was a weird movie. And obviously the Left Behind one, or the Leave the World Behind, and obviously the Obama's involvement is just strange. I don't read into too much of that, like predictive programming stuff. I think it's just as logical or more logical explanation that like people have been talking about the coming Civil War, and the discourse on that has been increasing over the past decade or whatever pretty exponentially anyway. So to have the movie come out now certainly makes sense that it could be because everyone's talking about that sort of thing, and not that they're making this happen and they're warning us or absolving themselves of karmic energy by telling us what their plans are or whatever. I don't know what the different ideas are, but it doesn't really make. First of all, even if it's true, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change what we need to do. But yeah, I don't buy all that stuff. Or like the numerology stuff that like people mentioned, like there's this, if you watch this movie in the cinematography, obviously all these weird numbers are just put in there by the directors as like Easter eggs, and because everything they want to make a certain way and relate to something else. And I really think that that sort of stuff is much more related to this guy being in fucking art nerd movie, like a film school nerd, than it is related to them trying to, the elite trying to send us messages through the movie or something like that. Because the cinematography is all stupid and extra. They love this shot where like the people is just staring past the camera. Like if yeah, obviously that's the camera, they're just like looking at whatever and talking. They did it multiple times throughout the movie. They would use these, I forget what it's called, like the, not a boom, but whatever the thing is that the camera's on when it's like on a track that they set up to have swoop around. They would use that thing and like drone shots for these really elaborate things where it would just should otherwise be like a second unit coverage type shot. I'll go over all this. I'm not going to go too much into the movie because I'm going to do this tomorrow or the next couple of days. But just being super extra for no reason, and like an upside down shot that like swoops in on something and the guy's like making a cup of coffee or something. What are you doing? Like, it's just distracting and annoying. The guy was like trying to, and then they had other ones that were like weird, almost like Tarantino style grindhouse shots, like zoom, close in on somebody and then cut to like some goofy music and just strange stuff. Yeah, it might give bad guys ideas more so than predictive programming. Yeah, like I would believe that more if like they're just trying to juice the idea in the zeitgeist more so than it's some of the other. But still, it's just, I think there's just a lot of weird people out there doing a lot of weird stuff, and that can explain a lot of it. But yeah, in the similar way that the FBI like creates basically all these plots and terror attacks and whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if some branch of the CIA wants to like inject ideas into the public zeitgeist and tries using movie and film and stuff like that. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But like I said, I think this is just some freaking art nerds being weird. The one surprising thing is it didn't have too much like what I would consider woke stuff in it, other than that the characters were like losers and everything, weirdos. There was one comment that they made about like can't trust white people, which would just, they would have gotten totally canceled if they had it the other way around, where like white characters said that about black people probably. But you could always say it's the characters and not, but whatever. The point is that it wasn't actually too much along that lines. There wasn't too much like what I would consider political messaging, at least compared to what I would probably expect. It was mostly just a drama about what's going on. But yeah, I'll talk about, I'm not going to get too much in the movie because I have all the points. But so there are still, of course, some prepping and survival lessons that we can learn from that. But not too many for a movie that's overtly about, because not a whole hell of a lot happens. So it'll probably be a short review. Mostly will be a lot like I've been here in the past few minutes ranting about their bizarre shot design and cinematography choices and music and stuff like that, because that was just all awful, just so extra. Well, we're about halfway mark, so if you guys give me a couple more topics last minute, and then I'm going to probably go snack on something. I have a lot. I just got another storage unit. Have to list all that stuff on eBay and Facebook Marketplace, so I don't have a house full of junk or a house full of as much junk. It's hard being a prepper and a junk seller and have hoarder tendencies. Pour one out for my girlfriend just to deal with all that at once. I don't own a TV, read for entertainment. Probably a good idea. I mean, most of the stuff you could, whatever you're watching this on, I guess you could watch this movie on. But we're actually dumping Netflix anyway soon, because we just don't use it that much. And when you look at the cost breakdown of what is it, $15 a month now, even if something comes up every once in a while, the vast majority of things that we watch on Netflix, we watch just because we have it already. And we're like, is there anything on there? We'll watch this. But if you really say we didn't have it, the amount of things that come up on Netflix that we actually want to watch are so low that even if you paid for the month here and there, you would still be saving a lot of money over the course of a year, because you'd be paying for like 2 or 3 months maybe total. And that's if you decided not to use some internet piracy skills, which of course I would never do. But I've heard that you can find a lot of that stuff and just download it pretty much even more easily than watching it legit way. That's just what I've heard. And then I have Prime anyway, because I get a lot of stuff for the fishing kits on there, and they have a card that you get 5% cash back, so it basically pays for itself. So that's, and they have Prime Video, so that's right now it's still lumped in. They're probably going to break it away, but if it's not on Prime and we can't download it, and if 2 months, 2 times throughout the year you want to pay for a month of Netflix to watch something, you'll still be saving quite a bit of money. Yeah, and if we could send that money or spend that money back on gold, silver, ammo, something like that, that's smart. And also one of the things was the show Supernatural, which is decent. It's not fucking amazing, but we like it, so we were gonna watch the rest of it because we were like 8 seasons behind. And it's on Netflix, but we realized like this is gonna take us months. So I literally just went and bought like the last 5 seasons box set, or however many we needed. It's 11 to 15, so it's like 5 or 6 seasons, or 4 or 5 seasons. And it was like $50. And then I'll just resell it for like $45, $35, whatever, when we're done. So for the cost of like 1 month of Netflix, we can watch the entire thing, which would probably take us 4 or 5 months because we don't just sit down and watch 8 hours of this. Because that show has like 22 episodes a season. They really like churned out that content for years. And we don't really watch it all that often, watch a couple episodes here and there. And so it would take a long time on Netflix. So like, why don't I just buy this thing for, it was just under $50, I think, for brand new one. So if I sell it like new for $10 less than or $15 less than I paid for it, that's worth it because it's like that much per month of Netflix. Not a huge saving, but obviously, money is money. Saving money everywhere you can. And I like the idea of not giving all these stupid companies money, I'm down to living on $275 per month plus food, says Lady T. I've cut bills to the home, only $4K. That is awesome. Also, you're able to do that. Hopefully you have as much money as you need or want, or find a way to. But keeping expenses low is super important right now. I know Pepper Princess is talking about that a lot in her videos about, and because it's getting more and more important because we're just getting squeezed on all sides. SBQR Cincinnati is the most important and perhaps most neglected by most is mental and physical fitness. Simple and obvious, I know. Yeah, absolutely. That's why we come back to what kind of American are you? Morbidly obese, or the one that can do a bunch of pull-ups with their gear on and run for a few miles without barfing and dying? Right now, I'm kind of in between because of my medical year. I'm slowly ramping into it. I'm super stiff right now. Like not pain, but like just mobility. Like I had, after not moving or doing a lot, I can't, like hamstring type stretches because my lower back and hamstrings are so tight that I'm just like a couple times a day. So as soon as I get work on that, the last thing I want to do is tear something. That's awesome. Glad to hear it, Lady T. And definitely looking at, I'm actually making, it wasn't really for anything to do with this channel, but I'm in the process of making like an ebook / course of some kind on selling stuff, all the little side hustles that I do, because, and which I can sell for some modest amount of money later. Because I did have another channel that I did for years on, making money on eBay and Amazon. And one of the things I did, which I'm going to do again, super stiff as TMI, is I would a couple times, and I'll do this again probably when I'm finished making the course, is to do the $1 challenge. It's fake because you never have to start with $1. Everyone can scrape together to $10, something like that. But I would start with $1 just to prove that anyone can do this, and go around to garage sales, stuff like that, and just buy 1 or 2 things for $1, flip them, and then roll it. See how quickly I could go from $1 to $1,000 from just selling stuff. And usually only takes a couple months, and most of that would be in the first, turning the $1 into $100. Turning the $50 or $100 into $1,000 can be done really easy. I got a $10, $20 storage unit last month that I made like $600 or $700 in profit off of within a month, just from the random stuff that was in there that I sold. Not always that lucrative, but the point is, it's very, very straightforward and relatively simple without a lot of time investment to bring in a couple hundred extra bucks a month selling stuff on the side. And not just that, there's a couple other side hustles as well. But and like, it makes me sick watching all these like hustle porn things about people being like, if you don't have, like watching people pay Grant Cardone to tell them that they're a piece of shit. for making $2 million a year because they should be making $2 million a month. And like people are paying him to get like this when I'm like, you know what the average household income is in the US? $1,000, $500 to $1,000 a month extra for most people is literally life changing, especially right now. It makes a difference between like massive problems to being break even. It can make the difference between being break even and being able to afford a house or a new car or fix things or give actually go on vacation or give presents to people and stuff like that. So the thing I'm going to be doing will be writing about all the different ways you can just make an extra 500 to 1,000 bucks a month, and it's super attainable. Making $2 million a month, not very attainable. You know how many people actually do that? How many people actually even make $200,000 a year? It's almost no one, statistically speaking. So, like, yes, it's a good goal, and but you should have to work by steps too. It'd be like taking someone who's on the couch, can't do a push-up, and watching videos and taking courses about how to bench 350 pounds. Like that can be your goal, but the amount of people that can do that is not very many. It's a huge process, and it's better to take an attainable goal that you can actually do and then work from there. Anyone can get to like a 200-pound bench, let's say, and that can be done relatively quickly, relatively easily if you do it the right way. But if you train from zero, like you're going to be satisfied with a 300+ pound bench, you're going to probably just hurt yourself, whatever. And the same goes with all these other little side hustle things. So I am not good at making lots of money, but I'm very good at finding a bunch of different ways to make a little bit of extra money. And these days, a little bit of extra money makes all the difference. Between, like I said, it can just be the difference maker for a lot of people in being able to cover an unexplained medical bill or expense or something like that. So I know about that. Sup, dude, says Twigs. Twice a year, I hit the spring and fall cleanup, make decent money that way for a couple months. Yeah, exactly. Back when I lived in Gainesville, it was a college town. So at the end of every semester, everyone would just throw everything out and they would just set it all by the dog, drive around in this like, everyone called it the rape van because it was a crusty old panel van. And I literally would just be furniture. There'd be clothes with their tags still on it, just everything that they couldn't fit in their car to get out of there and go home. They just left. And I would just cram it all in there and sell it on Facebook or Craigslist. Back then it was mostly Craigslist. And easy money. Now I do mostly the small storage units. The garage sales out here are not nearly as good. There's a lot of people who are running like fake businesses and do like their garage sale. So you end up wasting a lot of time going to these fake garage sales, which are more just like flea market boots. And the real actual garage sales are harder to find. But the storage unit stuff has been working out really well. I'm just limited by space and how many I can do at once. But it's a simple process and anyone can do it. But we're talking about preparedness. Awesome. Good free stuff. All right. Let me know if you guys have any last minute topics or questions. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off. Snack on something. Number one thing every prepper should have are physical books. I don't know if it's the number one thing, but they're definitely necessary, especially just the idea of having a physical book. Like I have my giant dictionary from the 60s because they're changing everything. And just having information in general, even if it's not books, but your own information. A lot of us, without thinking about it, will have stuff on a computer or not think about how often we need to like go check Google Maps or something to find out where stuff is, even in our immediate vicinity. So physical maps, all the information in down is a good idea. Definitely agree with that. But I appreciate you guys watching. I will definitely try to warn the guys next time, give them more notice, Che and Dan, so they can get on here. But I knew I hadn't done anything in a while. I've been having a hectic couple of weeks, and I wanted to show my face, let you guys know that I'm still rocking in the free world. So appreciate you guys watching. Are you looking forward to the new Mad Max movie? I don't know. I never hold out much hope for cinema these days. I'll watch it. I will admit I was not hopeful for the original one. I was like, this is gonna suck. No remakes are ever good. And it was awesome. So maybe I should give them the benefit of the doubt, but I think it's always better to have lowered expectations and be pleasantly surprised than to expect something good and be disappointed. But yeah, I appreciate it, Rico. Thanks for watching.